Ladies and gentlemen, it is me, Soul. I am back again on another episode of the Soul Sessions, and my guest today is the owner of Warrior Wrestling. We have Steve Tortatello. How are you doing, pal?
I'm doing well, Ben. Thanks for having me.
No worries, pal. So let's go off and start off with some of our people who might not be familiar with Warrior Wrestling. Just explain it to them.
Sure. So we are an independent American Wrestling Federation. We are based in Chicago in the Midwest, and we try to put together dream matches of different talent that either you've seen on TV, you see on TV currently, or the future, the next generation. And we really model ourselves after some of the bigger, more explosive indie promotions in that we want great world-class talent. So currently our champions are Will Ospreay and Thunder Rosa, names that I'm sure every wrestling fan knows. Our Lucha Libre champion is Sam Adonis, who's in AAA down in Mexico. He's one of their trios champions. And then we've also got a variety of other talent that come through. We just had a show this past weekend with Killer Cross and Athena and Casey Navarro and Speedball Mike Bailey. So we really try to be a crossroads where talent from all different corners of the world collide in mostly first time ever matches. So we try to put together a fun product for everybody.
You really are the true dream maker, aren't you? Just
We're trying to be.
You're doing absolutely grand. Let's speak about your champions first. Will Ospreay, a hell of a champion to have, I must say. Wow.
Yeah. You know, if you could go back about 5 or 6 years in time and tell me and my right-hand man, my best friend Eric, that we'd be running a promotion and our champion would be Will Ospreay, we would tell you you're lying and we're not going to buy whatever you're selling. But here we are, and a guy that we consider to be one of the greatest wrestlers alive, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, carries our banner on his shoulder or across his waist. In fact, he carried the Warrior Wrestling title down the ramp for the main event of Night 2 of the Tokyo Dome. It was hanging off of his belt as he walked into the Tokyo Dome. That's it. We've peaked. We're done. We're very, very happy.
My God. Yeah, I saw that as well. And I saw your championship just shining off his belt. I was like, whoa, speak about that. How did you feel about that? And how did you know, he was going to definitely carry out the belt?
Yeah, so we felt just over the moon about it, not only from a business strategy, brand recognition point, but just from the fact that, again, one of the greatest people to do this is carrying your banner, carrying your symbol. We didn't know Will was going to do it until he won the title in December at an event we had in Chicago. And in his post-match promo, he said, Warrior Wrestling, I'm taking this belt and I'm carrying it down the ramp at the Tokyo Dome. And everybody behind the scenes went, what? And so he said, okay. And he did it. You know, he didn't tell us he was going to say that, but then he went out and said it. And once he said it, he damn well had to deliver it, and he did.
I can't imagine, as a creator, having your baby basically on the grandest stage of all and on such a pristine event. You must have been just shocked.
Oh, the group chat among the Warrior Wrestling, producers and people was just insane those couple of days for the Tokyo Dome, because he wore it the first night for it was in a 6-man tag, I think. And then the second night it was the main event against Okada, and he walked out with the Warrior belt, held it up on the turnbuckle. Chris Charlton mentioned his upcoming match. It was just like an out-of-body experience.
Truly, wow, the little guy becoming up the big guy sort of situation. It must have just been mad. Speaking of your title belt, I'm a really big fan of it. I love simplicity behind it, but it also looks honorable, the best way to describe it. What was the idea coming up with that championship?
I'm a huge wrestling nerd. Before we ever ran a promotion, I watched tons of stuff from all across the country. And one of the things that I don't like is that so many belts look the same. If you could take the top independent promotions in the United States, all the top 20 of them, and you lined up their belts along a wall, most fans couldn't tell you which was which. And that's true oftentimes for major promotions as well, for national promotions. So we wanted the belt to stand out and be completely different and identifiable, so that when you saw it, you went, that's the Warrior Wrestling belt, or what is that symbol? What is that belt? I want to learn more. So that's what we wanted it to be, clear and clean. And I like you using the word honorable. I haven't heard that before. That's why we chose that logo for our company over a variety of other logos we looked at, because it was so clean and straightforward. It looked like it could be the logo for a major sports league. It didn't have blood and skulls and explosions or whatever. It's just a very clear silhouette of is it a Spartan mask or a lucha mask or a helmet or whatever it might be. It's very clean and clear. So I appreciate the word honorable, but we were going for recognizable and immediately different.
Definitely. I mean, speaking of Ospreay coming out of it, it was identifiable as well right off the bat.
Yeah, that's what we were hoping for. You saw it and you went, "What's that?"
Yeah, exactly. And then people go and search up Warrior Wrestling and then get to find these dream matches that you're able to put on for people, which is grand in itself.
Yeah, it's a win for everybody.
Yeah, and let's move on to your women's champion, Thunder Rosa, who I'm a big fan of. Obviously, last night she won the AEW Women's Championship in that steel cage match. How does that feel as someone she's holded your women's title to now come back as a double champ?
You know, it's so interesting because as a promoter and booker person, I get to know the human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And so yes, it's always cool as a fan to say, "Oh, this talent is great and it's so cool to see them achieve." Like I know Thunder Rosa, but I know Melissa Cervantes Robles and
Mm-hmm.
Mel. I'm happy for Mel. I'm happy for her as the human being that a major international company put their motor behind her and they're pushing her to the moon because she deserves it. She's the hardest working person in any room that she's in. She's a kind and giving person with everyone that she works with. And so I watched it last night with my wife, and my wife helps work on our wrestling shows. And when she won the belt and she held it up and she's crying and Dustin comes in, my wife turned to me and my wife had tears in her eyes. She's like, "I'm crying." I was like, "Yeah, like we're happy for Mel." So it just feels so good. We felt the same way when Dez and Zach signed with WWE and then won the NXT tag titles as whatever they are, Nash and whatever their names are in MSK.
Oh, yes. MSK, yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's the people. We feel so proud and so happy for the people. So I feel great.
Yeah, of course. As we as fans, we just see who they are out in the ring, but obviously you guys, the promoters, must get to know them very well, and it's obviously great to see them succeed and realize their talents are amazing.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is we've been very lucky over the years to kind of weed out, people who aren't great people aren't usually working at our shows because we have just good, kind, wonderful people, and they're attracted to what we do, and we like having them. And so, yeah, anytime that they do something huge, it's a proud moment. It's strangely emotional, more so than just like, yeah, my favorite one. It's my friend won.
That's great. Have you spoke to Thunder since you won the title?
I texted with her last night and this morning actually as well, in planning for our next show in South Bend. And I just said, "I hope you're okay," because she's been really banged up lately. And I said, "I hope you're okay. I hope you got through it safely." She gave me a thumbs up. And then we traded some text messages about the next show. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And another one is Wardlow. So Wardlow was on several Warrior Wrestling shows, and I texted him after the big Revolution turn where he turned on MJF. And I just basically said, "Hey, Michael, we're so happy for you. You're finally getting this big break, and I just want you to know that we're going to be rooting for you." And he and I traded text messages. And anytime, not just the titles, but anytime the people that we've worked with who are so good get the opportunity and the platform, we're thrilled for them.
Yeah, of course. That's absolutely great. She must be frustrated when sometimes you see the person and you know they're a good person, but wherever they are, they're maybe being restricted and not given their due deserves. It must be hard to see sometimes.
Yeah, so I mean, here's a very obvious one that's in the news in the wrestling sites as people talk about when he's coming back and what he's going to do. Brian Cage. We think Brian Cage is one of the most versatile and talented guys in all of wrestling. And he was our champion. He was our first champion for a long time. He has had absolute bangers for us. And in AEW, he was very limited in how he was used. Now, I get it. They've got a million people on their roster, but it's like, come on, guys, you got to figure something out for Brian Cage. So I am waiting to see what the plan is now that they've re-signed him. And hopefully they give him something to sink his teeth into, because he's a guy that a lot of promotions just pigeonhole into, well, he's big, he'll be big. He's so much more than big. So I'm waiting to see, all right, what are they going to do with him? And I feel that way about a few other people as well. So it's an interesting place to be in.
Of course, yeah. Let's speak upon AEW, because a lot of people that come into your shows are a part of their roster. You've had the Acclaim, Thunder Rosa we've mentioned before, Brian Cage, Sky Blue as well, who's not actually signed with AEW, but has been featured prominently. How does that happen, getting their talent to come onto your show? Do you speak to the talent, or have you spoke to Mr. Khan himself? And
I've never spoken to Tony Khan. So if you'd like to call me Tony, you're welcome to.
Hey.
But a lot of it's directly through the talent, and then sometimes through other talent. They do have a central talent coordinator. Christopher Daniels, CD, does their talent. So I do a lot of organizational stuff with him. But the nice thing is that they allow their talent to do other shows. So obviously John Moxley's big into GCW. He's doing a bunch of GCW stuff. Thunder Rosa works with us. Brian Cage, Lance Archer. You mentioned the Acclaimed, Top Flight. They are true independent contractors in the sense that they work for AEW on the nights when they're taping AEW, and when they're not, they can do other things. And that is completely different than WWE, obviously. So it's up to the talent. There are talent in AEW who are perfectly content to just do AEW and that's it. They're not looking to take indie dates. And then there are talent in AEW who are actively out there trying to wrestle more, trying to get better, trying to make more money. And so for us, I think we've worked with so many AEW talent that the word is out there in their locker room that we're a place that they can go where they'll get paid well and get treated well. And so a lot of times folks will reach out to us when they'll say, hey, I know Brian Cage, he recommended I touch base with you guys, and we're off to the races. So, and there's obviously always talent too that we're trying to get that either aren't taking dates or it's hard to coordinate. So it's a combination of people reaching out to us reaching out to people. But I can't say enough good things about working with AEW because the organization is really easy to work with. They're good people and they let their talent do their jobs.
That's grand. At the end of the day, the wrestlers are the best people to do their jobs in the rings, and we've always got to let them aspire and grow. They can't just sit on the bench forever and not grow as a person and a performer.
Exactly. We've worked with a lot of AEW talent who, again, just because their roster is so big, they've only had a couple of matches in the couple of months before we book them. And then they come by us and they get to have a 15-minute match and tear the house down. And they're just so happy to have that opportunity. Not that AEW doesn't think they're great, but AEW just has so many people that they can't have a 15-minute match every week on Dynamite. So they get to come to us. And we kind of joke internally that we are the playground of the stars. They get to come to us and do everything they want to do. And they love it. So
let's speak about making dream matches. Who in AEW, let's say a male and a female talent and a tag team talent that you want to bring into Warrior Wrestling and showcase?
Great question. Oh man. Let's start with a male talent, and I'll shoot for the moon here. It's probably highly unlikely because he is a VP, but Kenny Omega has been somebody we've wanted to get for years. We had some talks with people that were close to him in 2018. It never really materialized before AEW became a thing. I think Kenny is one of those guys who's the complete package as a storyteller, as a wrestler, as an athlete, and from all accounts, just the nicest human being in the world. So I think he'd fit in very well with how we run things and who we are. So Kenny, we'd love to work with. Malachi Black is another person we'd love to work with. I think he's just so talented in ways that we haven't even seen yet on AEW. On the female side of things, we've been very blessed. We've had Britt Baker, we've had Thunder Rosa, we've had Sky Blue. I think Hikaru Shida would be great. I think she is an underrated talent that while she was champion during the pandemic, I don't think she was showcased in a way that in front of crowds. It's not AEW's fault, but we didn't get to see how great she could be and how crowds would react to her while she was champion. So I'd say Shida, we'd love to have on the women's end. On the tag team end, again, I will shoot for the moon and say the Young Bucks or FTR. I've been a Young Bucks fan for a very long time. I lived in Los Angeles for a few years in 2008, 2009, 2010. And I got to see a lot of local Los Angeles indie promotion matches with the Young Bucks in them. And I knew from the first time I saw them, these guys are special. They're different. They're unlike anything I'd ever seen. And so seeing those guys go from where they were when I first saw them to what they've become in literally fueling a revolution, I would love to work with them. So I'd say Young Bucks and FTR on the tag team front.
That's absolutely great. I mean, all of them top guys, and they can make more dream matches within Warrior Wrestling. I want to speak about someone who was previously in Warrior Wrestling and is now ascended to Mad Plains, Matt Cardona, the Deathmatch King.
Yeah, Matt's a guy who's a perfect example of reinventing himself on the indies. We were actually, I think, his first indie booking after he was released from WWE. We were the first one announced. He might have snuck one in right before us. And then the day after our show, this would have been June 5th of 2021, on the 6th, he went to GCW and beat Nick Gage and became the king of the deathmatch.
I remember that, and the internet community was so buzzed. Like, he's not going to show up. He's at this Warrior Wrestling. He can't show up. And then, boom, under the mask there. And it was like, oh, my God, we're in for some treat right now. And look at what he's done.
Yes. So he made his first appearance the day after us. And he'd even posted that morning, like, I'm home in Orlando, like a fake picture at the airport or something.
Mhm.
So I think Cardona is great. I think he has figured out what to do to be a sensation on the indies. So I often compare him. I don't know how closely you've followed or if you've studied ECW in 96, 97. Cardona's role on the indies is basically Jerry Lawler in ECW in 97, where he shows up as the WWF guy who looks
Mhm.
down on all this garbage and is going to steal your title and your thunder and your main events. It's a built-in perfect character. He plays it to a T, and we would love to have him back in the future because he's fantastic.
Well, who knows, if you have Cardona back, he might end up stealing your title.
Yeah, we don't want that,
No,
but
no,
we'd probably
no.
like to have him back.
Would you oppose to Cardona stealing your title, or would you be like, hey, you've got enough, pal. Let us keep ours?
Yeah, we'd have to see how many else he's carrying at the time. You know, I don't even know if he could get it back in his bag because he's got so many others. So we'd have to see.
Yeah, exactly. Let's speak about your recent show where you had some grand matches up there, like the tag team with Athena and like Thunder Rosa as well. I mean, how was that, putting that together, a show together that with that grand kind of scale? Was it quite difficult and challenging, or was it quite all right? We're working well with AEW to get these talent and the indie guys booking. How was it?
Yeah, so I think the AEW working with AEW, working with Impact, that's really easy because we have those relationships with them now for years. One of the
Mhm.
things that throws you for a loop is sometimes travel issues. So this past show, we had AQA and Frank the Clown and Jonah were not able to make the show because of travel issues. There was a giant blizzard that hit the east coast of the U.S. and stopped their flights from getting in, and a few other flights we had to move around. Thunder Rosa, Sam Adonis. So there's a whole lot of travel agenting on the front end that you have to do sometimes, and you have to triage and figure things out. So that tag match actually ended up being a triple threat with Rosa and Athena and Sky Blue, and it was amazing. And it was, again, a match that wasn't planned 6 hours before, and all of a sudden you have it. So I think one of the keys to being an indie promotion is, especially if you're flying folks in, you always have to be willing to pivot and willing to get creative with your card and your lineup. And that's the difficulty, more so than working with the big companies. It's pivoting and figuring something out the day of the show when something goes wrong.
No, would you say that's the biggest lesson you've learned as an indie promoter, or has there been other lessons that you've went and like, yeah, this is the key to running a promotion?
That's one of them. Another key, I would say, is treating the talent like they are professionals. So my background, my day job is I'm the principal of a high school, and everybody else who works behind the scenes at Warrior all are related to schools in some way. My buddy's an administrator, another friend's a teacher, another friend's a counselor. And we run Warrior Wrestling the way we would run a meeting we are hosting for other teachers or principals or counselors, straight down to the way we feed people, the way we treat people, the organization, how we do things and lay things out. And a lot of indie wrestling is very haphazard and very shoestring budget, and not really conducive to treating the talent well. I mean, some places do, but not as a whole. And so what we learned from the talent is the first couple of shows we ran them like we'd run a conference. And the talent were blown away by how organized it was, how clear it was, how transparent it was, how we paid people professionally. And we said, well, we're just doing what we do in our day job. And that has been probably the most salient lesson we've learned is treat it like it's a professional organization. Don't cut costs. Don't skimp. Don't haggle with people. You know, if you know, pay people what they're worth, pay people what you agree on, feed people, be organized, email them the schedule and the agenda, do those kind of things, and folks will be thrilled that you treated them like they're professionals. So that, I think, is a big lesson for indie promotions and that we learned early on.
That's good to hear. Always good to be learning, because every day is a school day, isn't it?
Yep. That's a great phrase. I'm going to steal that.
Oh, good. Take it. Yeah, use it. One thing I want to say as an international fan is, obviously you put your shows on Fight TV. I want to know, how is it working with Fight? Is it pretty easy, some procedure? Because, you know, obviously we international fans don't understand the whole behind the scenes with it. I was just curious about that.
Yeah, they are really easy to work with. They're great. Michael Weber, who's the head guy over there, he and I talked personally when we started on Fight, and we've checked in from time to time. Basically, I have a production guy who runs all the in-house production for our shows, so cameras, boards, switching, uplinks, etc. I connect him to a guy at Fight. They work out all the technical stuff. And then our relationship with FITE is really, really smooth. And we've never had any problems, glitches, issues being on FITE. And again, it allows for folks like yourself to watch the show, because otherwise we don't have international distribution. And I have to look at the February report, but as of the January show, we've got folks watching Warrior Wrestling in 30 something different countries.
Wow.
So it just blows my mind, right? So we've got 10 orders in Singapore and 15 orders in New Zealand and 28 orders in Russia, and all watching live around the world. And that, again, from, as you mentioned earlier with Will Ospreay, our little baby, our little thing, there's somebody halfway around the world who paid money to watch our thing. That's crazy.
It's got to be utterly mind-blowing. Was there a country that caught you off guard? Like, whoa, that's how far our reach is?
Yeah, I mean, Singapore, Japan, Russia, a handful of the Nordic countries. We had a lot of buys in the Nordic countries. There's a couple in Africa. I think there's folks in Kenya and Mozambique. And it's like, oh my God, there are wrestling fans everywhere.
Yeah, it's a whole worldwide fandom. We're all fans at the end of the day.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to point out on your website, which I thought this is absolutely great, was the Champions Charity.
Thank you.
Talk to us behind that inception, and what was the idea of, like, yeah, we're going to do this?
Well, so we started this a few shows ago. Our company began, I mentioned I'm the principal of a high school. It's a private high school, so it's not a publicly funded high school. And our company actually began as a fundraiser for the high school where I work. And every dollar we made went into a scholarship fund to help kids at our school. And we did that for the first 7 or 8 shows that we ran as Warrior Wrestling. Actually, more than that, probably the first 10 or 12. And then as we started touring and going other places and doing other things, we decided we're going to do something different, charitable, everywhere we go. And the idea of the Champions Charity came about. So each of our champions can pick a charity that is near and dear to them, and we will raffle off an autographed, it's kind of like a poster. It's an acrylic, a sturdy acrylic poster autographed by that champion. And all of the raffle tickets we sell, all of it goes 100% to the charity that they choose. So we started it several shows ago. We've donated, probably $1,500 over 3 shows to the different charities. And some folks, like Will Ospreay, is a very generous person. He matches our donations to Samaritans, which is a mental health organization in the UK that's focused on suicide prevention. So collectively, we're doing something good, and we're really, really proud of that.
Well, hey, honestly, I would give you a round of applause right now, because it's always grand to see taking care of others and, promoting these great charities. And, Samaritans in the UK is well beloved here. I can assure you with that. It's great for you to support that. So thank you very much for that.
Of course, we're happy to do it. At the end of the day, we're all very joyful people. We do wrestling because we love it. We think it's just a fun, incredible atmosphere. And if we can take the thing that we love to do, if we can do it well, if we can impress some people with how we do it, and then do some good in the world, there's nothing more you can ask for.
That's it. It's always great to see. So let's speak now about tag teams. Will we see a tag team championship for Warrior Wrestling?
There's no firm timeline. I would say yes at some point. We've been asked year over year for tag titles. We introduced the Lucha title last year, and a lot of people went, oh, they're going that way. And so that was the new thing we introduced in 21. Maybe in 22, we have not defined it and said it definitively, but we've had a lot of great tag teams over the last few shows. We've had the Briscoe brothers, we've had Top Flight, we've had the Workhorsemen, we've had the Acclaimed, Little Rascals. So we've had a long history of great tag teams, and I would imagine they will be on their way, tag titles, but not quite yet.
That's a sign. Patience is key.
Yes, sir.
Let's speak about match types as well. We've seen the rise of the more extreme types of match styles. What is your thoughts about bringing a more extreme vibe to Warrior Wrestling?
So we've done a handful of different types of brawls over the course of our existence. We had a great street fight with Austin Aries and Eddie Edwards earlier on. We had one with Pat Monix and Sam Adonis. There was an incredible brawl in 2020 between Robert Ego Anthony with Frank the Clown at his side and Joey Janela that culminated in Janela doing a swanton off the goalposts of the football field through Ego and Frank into tables. So we've had some fun brawls. We are not a death match organization, and that's just not something that fits into our brand and our style, and frankly all the insurance headaches and other things that come with that. So I know there's a lot of folks that love it, and that's great. That's light tubes and glass and that kind of thing. That's not really our brand. So you're going to see tables, you're going to see chairs, you're going to see some outside of the ring stuff. You'll see some crazy jumps off of stuff, but the death match stuff, we leave that for other folks. And honestly, I don't think anybody would want us doing that lesser than somebody else does it. So if there are other companies out there that do that really well and innovate in that way, we're not going to rip off their brand. Let them innovate that. We'll stay focused on state-of-the-art in-ring action, lucha action, tag action, great women's wrestling. That's what we do. We're going to stay focused on that.
Exactly. It's like, you know, your identity and what you're best at doing. You don't want to try and cross, pollinate and go for something else. You know what you're good at, and we'll stick with what we are. If you want something else, there's other alternatives. It's a free range. Enjoy what you like.
Exactly, right? And I think what we offer, as I said, is those action-packed matches, those dream matches, and just in high-quality exchanges. So this past show on Saturday had Speedball Mike Bailey versus Casey Navarro. Go out of your way to watch this match. It is I truly believe, the definition of state of the art, meaning this match is where wrestling is in 2022 and where it's going. It had the speed and intensity of a great lucha match or a Young Bucks match, but the strikes and the kicks and the counters of a great New Japan match. We want to be on the cutting edge of in-ring athletic wrestling. That's our brand.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Let's take a wee, I wouldn't say negative, but a disliking tour away. You had a match with Athena and Thunder Rosa in the ring, and there was an ignorant fan in the audience who took a shot at Athena, and obviously Thunder Rosa spoke her mind in the ring as well. She should have. How do you deal with those kind of negative connotations from the fan as a promoter? It must be hard.
Great question. So it's really interesting. So we've done 20 shows now, and 18 of them have been in Chicago. And even in Chicago, we've moved around to different venues. And it's interesting because we have kind of our crowd that comes with us that likes our product and likes our wrestling. And our crowd doesn't do that. But when we have a bigger show, a bigger draw, sometimes you get new fans in, which is great. Obviously, we want more people coming in, but they bring a mentality of, oh, I'm going to a wrestling show, and here's how you act at a wrestling show. So for example, we had a show in December as well, where there was a group of drunken guys who were just like chanting for tables in the middle of the women's match and things like that. And if that is brought to our attention, we'll send an usher to go talk to him and be like, hey, be respectful of the athletes that are in the ring competing for you right now. This is not 2001. You can't chant for puppies and tables and whatever. If you're going to a show that's going to promote that, then chant that there, but that's not what we do. And so it's difficult because generally we don't have any issues, but then every now and then it takes one fan who thinks this is the way I'm going to act at a wrestling show. And it's not representative of the 700 people sitting around them who are into the match and giving the competitors all of their respect and all their focus. So we try to deal with it if we hear it. Sometimes we don't. So like that, the guy who had yelled at Athena, I was actually downstairs paying other wrestlers from earlier in the night. I had no idea that it happened. I found about it when Rosa grabbed the mic and talked about that. And I leaned into somebody else and said, what the hell happened? And someone said, oh, I think somebody said something. So if we hear about it, we will address it as quickly as we can. But yeah, there's no place that not in 2022, not in the way that we run our promotion. So
No.
and good on Rosa for at the end of the night telling that guy to stick it up his ass.
Exactly. Yeah. Rosa doesn't take no shit. She will.
No, she does not.
No. I would not want to cross that woman in a lifetime.
Nope.
Let's move on. Obviously, speaking about tables and like 2001 sort of stuff, a lot of fan mentality is still stuck favoriting that era because it was good. But obviously, wrestling has moved on to the way it is now. It's always an evolutionary progress. How do you find that as a promoter to like, yeah, we're here now, guys. Let's, we love the past, but we're trying to move on.
It's interesting. That's a great question. And I think it also depends a lot on the brand, like we've talked about. So there are some great indie promotions whose shows I've gone to that I really enjoy, and they book just like it's 99 and 2001. A lot of run-ins, a lot of ref bumps, but it works for them. It works for their audience, and it's the right flow for them. And the talent that they're working with, that plays to their strengths. For us, if we've got Top Flight and Trey Miguel and Myron Reed and Arez and Dante Leon, that type of story and booking doesn't. These guys just go nuts. Guys go nuts. Do what you do athletically. So there are some promotions where that style, that 99, 2000, 2001, short matches, run-ins, ref bumps, story in every moment kind of a thing, that works for them. You really just have to figure out what is your niche as a brand. So for us, I have found over the years as we've evolved, we are more and more modeled off of AEW and New Japan than we are off of Attitude Era WWE. And that's okay. It's different. There's things that you learn from those eras that still play, right? People like a table spot. They like, a ref bump or something like that. But what doesn't play anymore at all, especially not with us, but anywhere, is over sexualization of women and derogatory treatment like that. That used to happen in the indie feds I would go to in the early 2000s because they were mimicking what they saw in WWF. That's dead. So there are elements of the Attitude Era that are dead and gone and should be, and there are elements that still work. It just depends on who you are and what your brand is and what you cultivate for your audience.
Speaking of that, I like how your women's title is just the same as the men, but a nice tinge of silver as well. I like that. Very representative, not diva things or anything like that.
Nope, there's nothing cute or fancy about our belt. It's a belt for a champion.
Exactly. That's the best way to describe it. As a fan yourself, what's one thing you look back now and think that, sort of match type or something like that is absolutely trash and you would never want to replicate in your own promotion?
Interesting. So something I've seen somewhere else that I'm like, yeah. Some of the more dangerous deathmatch stuff. I've been at a show where there was a death match and a guy fell on a ladder and a light tube, and the end of the light tube went into his neck, and he was gushing blood and had to be rushed from the ring. And they actually put him in someone's car to drive him to the hospital because they figured an ambulance would take too long and he would bleed out and die before the ambulance got there. There are things like some of that level of deathmatch stuff. It's just not for me. I know that it's for other folks, but I think about this, and maybe I'm an old grandma kind of in a man's clothing, but I think about it from the safety of the performers. I know that's what they sign up for, but as a promoter, I don't feel comfortable sending somebody out there and saying, do this for me in my ring for my company, because I feel like your safety is on me. Yes, you signed up to do the stuff, you choose to do the spots, but your safety's on me. So for me, some of the gnarlier, unsafe deathmatch stuff, it's just not for me. We're just not going to see it in our promotion. Same thing, like I said a moment ago, anything that over sexualizes women or degrades women. So, and there's not many promotions doing that anymore because that is out. It's passe. But we'll never do anything like that. Our female athletes are treated like female athletes. So those are the two things that I don't think you'll ever see at Warrior Wrestling unless somebody kills me and takes over and changes it.
Over your dead body sort of situation. Yep. Never going to happen. Hey, that's great to see. Let's move on to obviously women's wrestling as well. Was there a bit of a obviously we know the internet community is a nice joyful place with the internet community. How has it been with the internet community and some of the women's matches? Have there been some people that have been not the nicest, or has there been a lot of support around your end?
What's interesting is internet trolls tend to jump into different themes and jump onto different bandwagons. I have not seen any major negative feedback about the performance of women's wrestling or about the women in their capacity as performers. I have seen just weird pilings on about the women as individuals. And sometimes that can be vicious and weird. So I'll give you two different examples, but both exemplify this. One is Tessa Blanchard, right? So we've worked with Tessa for a very long time. I love Tessa to death. She's one of the greatest humans I've ever met. She's kind, she's thoughtful, she's hardworking, she's great with everybody. She's just a great human being. There's a story that came out a couple of years ago, and she was an Impact, that she had gotten into an argument with a wrestler of color from the division before that and had used a racial slur. I don't know the veracity of the story. I've never asked Tessa about it. But just the way that people come after her as if they know who she is and know her character is just really gross. There's this thing that trolls feel empowered, that they think they know something wrong about somebody else. So they're just going to bully and berate and harass that other person so that they feel bigger and better than that person. Same thing with Kylie Rae. It's no secret Kylie Rae has had battles with mental health and depression and anxiety and a few other things that have caused her to have to step back from a national spotlight a couple of times. There are people who are really shitty to
Mhm.
and about Kylie on social media. And it is, I don't get mad when people criticize me or Warrior Wrestling. No one knows who I am. They don't criticize me. But if they criticize Warrior Wrestling, I don't get mad. But when I see people unfairly say terrible things about people that I know, again, coming back to the human element, when
Mhm.
you're criticizing, Tessa Blanchard, the wrestler, you're criticizing Tessa Blanchard, the human. When you're criticizing Kylie Rae, you're criticizing Brianna Sperry, the human. And
Mhm.
that is what is so angering for me to see. And so it's not so much folks making snide comments about women's wrestling. It's about internet trolls deriding women specifically that they think they know or they think they can judge. That is really shady. And that's what I just don't respond to on our socials, because otherwise I'm going to say something I'm going to regret.
Right.
That really gets me the wrong way.
It must be absolutely tragic as well. Being the promoter and you get to know these people as humans and not wrestlers. They're people at the end of the day, and you get
Yep.
to make connections with them. And you see when this whole mob mentality just comes for them and not understanding their situation or what they've been through or how they're feeling that day. They might be feeling really shit when they woke up and just being like a bad mental health day, and it must be really shit. Just like seeing that happen.
Yeah, and again, we'll bring Will Ospreay again. Will has been public about this, so I can share some of it. In the speaking out movement a couple of years ago, there were people that accused Will that Will's friend had supposedly assaulted someone, and Will and B had not booked that person on a show or told a promoter not to book that person, and all
Mhm.
these things. And it led to all of these vultures just saying awful things about William Peter Charles Ospreay, the human
Mhm.
being, who is an incredibly kind and thoughtful and just gracious person who suffers through debilitating anxiety and ADHD and other things that he has battled throughout his life. And to see a whole bunch of trolls decide that they know whatever the background is of something they don't know nothing about, and that empowers them to harass and belittle a kind soul who suffers from mental health struggles, and to see what that did to him,
Mhm.
it is just, again, they're people, right? Like, famous people are people. I'm very lucky in the wrestling world to know a lot of famous people, and all of them are human. I promise you, they all bleed. And that's there's something in our societies, it's very true in the US, it's very true in the UK as well.
Mhm.
The tabloid culture,
Yeah.
that we feel like we know famous people, or famous people owe us something, or because they're famous, we can talk about them and treat them in a way that you wouldn't treat your neighbor's dog. And
Mhm.
it just makes me sick, So sorry to go on such a soapbox,
No,
but
no,
it
no. No.
blows me away. So if there's a wrestling fan out there listening, if the one thing you pull from this interview about Warrior Wrestling is, don't be a dick to people online, because you know what? Famous people are people.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people. There's mob mentality to a lot of guys you never know like them. WWE's Lars Sullivan as well, and
Yeah.
Marty Skrull as well. Mob mentality for those kind of guys as well.
Yeah.
I was a fan of Marty as well. Was
And I'll add this too, and this adds a level of depth that internet trolls don't like to go into.
mhm,
Just because let's say someone has done something wrong,
mhm,
that doesn't give you the right to harass and stalk and bully them. You are not justice, internet troll, right? Like, there is a justice system. There are
mhm,
systems of interpersonal justice between individuals. Even if someone has done something wrong, you are not judge, jury, and executioner. And that is the other thing I think people need to know.
Yeah, of course, absolutely as well. I'm a fan of Marty Skrull, and it
Same
was great.
here.
Yeah, I know it was great to see him come back in Unlimited Wrestling in Germany as well, and slowly work up the ways to the where he's now. Would you love to see Marty in Warrior?
Yeah, honestly, there, and again, for anyone that's not sure, like, what's the deal with Marty Scurll? It came out that he had sexual relations with a young lady who was 16 at the time, and I think he was 20 or 22 at the time, and 16 is an age of consent in England, but he
Mm,
did not know, and later on, she said she felt coerced, etc. That's a tragic situation. I don't know all
mhm,
the specifics of that situation. I don't know the veracity of everyone's claims and takes in that situation, but it's a tragic situation. I don't think that means that that gentleman should never be able to work again, right? Like
mhm,
there's this thing among internet trolls that someone did something wrong, so therefore I must cost them their livelihood until they die.
mhm,
What's wrong with you? Right? Like, do you not believe in redemption? Do you not believe in people being able to, even people who have done something wrong, being
mhm,
able to make up for their mistakes, correct themselves, and become a productive, functional member of society again? I don't know Marty Scurll personally, so I don't feel the way about him that I do when people attack people that I know. But I
mhm.
just feel as a human in general, all people deserve the chance at redemption. And you, as an outsider, don't know the facts of a situation you're not in.
Exactly. People can make mistakes, and they are allowed a chance to look back and say, "Hey, hands up, made a mistake. Let me become a better person from it."
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, of course, of course. I would love to see Marty in Warrior, and I hope maybe sometime we can see him in Warrior. It'd be great
Yeah,
to see.
yeah, I think one day that would be something that we'd like to see.
Correct, correct, correct. Let's move on, like off the trolls and all that, because they're waste of air sort of situation, just the
Yep.
way they are. Um, what is the aim goal for Warrior Wrestling in 2022?
2022 is a year of experimenting. So we actually had a big strategic meeting with our whole team in December on Zoom, a couple of meetings where we brainstormed ideas. In
Mm,
up to 2022, we had only been in Chicago. This year,
mm,
we're going to South Bend, Indianapolis, St. Louis, Grand Rapids, and then we're coming back to Chicago, and we're hoping to get to Milwaukee as well in the fall. It's a year of exploring. We're going to try new markets. We're going to try new things. We're doing a greater focus on social media. We've got a great social media runner named Henry who's creating a lot of content for us and getting a lot of stuff out. We're kicking around the idea of other digital content in the future. This is a year of seeing how big we can grow, where we can grow successfully, and then planning to take off in 2023. We have previously been a 4 times a year super show. Now
mm.
we are a traveling super show and we want to grow. We think there's an opportunity to truly grow independent wrestling. And we want to be the ones that sees that. So we are in growth mode.
Good. If you're speaking about growing the independence, let's say someone comes to you and say, "Hey, Warrior Wrestling, I want to give you this amount of money." How would you grow the independence?
Wow. I think there is a market for more shows like we do with bigger names. So the way
Mm-hmm,
the way the independents are set up is essentially you've got very, very top end independents. This is true in the United Kingdom, it's true in Germany, it's true in the US. You have very, very top end independents, which we would consider ourselves part of, that have TV level talent, draw hundreds and hundreds, if not 1,000 folks to shows and do these big shows. And then you have a lot of local talents with local promotions with local talents and they draw 40 people, 50 people. There's nothing wrong with that. That's great. That's where people are seeing the local folks in their town, where people are honing their craft. I think there is an opportunity for these super shows to do more across the United States because WWE doesn't come to town that often.
mm-hmm,
AEW does not come to town that often. AEW basically runs 50 to 55 shows per year. So if they come to Indianapolis, Indiana, they're coming once a year.
mm-hmm,
WWE used to run a whole lot more shows. They've curtailed that since the pandemic. So they're maybe coming to Indianapolis once or twice a year. Well, there are fans in Indianapolis who want to see wrestling with TV level stars more than once or twice a year. So there
mm-hmm,
is a market for a mid to high level indie like Warrior to come to big cities and say, you want to see Lance Archer? We're bringing him. We're
mm-hmm,
bringing Top Flight. We're bringing Thunder Rosa, and you can see them up front because when AEW comes to Indianapolis, you might be in the 300s seeing Thunder Rosa from 50 yards away. When you see her at Warrior Wrestling, you're in row 6, and it's a different experience. So I believe in indie wrestling as a whole. I think indie wrestling is a specific and unique genre of wrestling that has its own charm, totally separate from the big leagues. And I think the more people that try indie wrestling, more people will like it. I think there's really an opportunity out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I experienced a universal dark taping of AEW Dark, and that felt more impactful than being at Revolution far up in the rafters sort of situation. It was so like I could see the Young Bucks in situation. It felt so personal and like, wow, this is high energy. There may only be like 150 people here, but it was like off the charts sort of levels.
Yeah, I would compare it to, if you're listening, you're a music fan. There used to be a club in New York called CBGB. It was the punk rock club, and you can see the Ramones play a giant amphitheater, but to see the Ramones at CBGB, it was something special, something different. You were there. It was, and everybody who was there was a diehard. And
Mhm.
that's what I used to compare the Bucks and PWG at the old American Legion before they tore it down. To see the Young Bucks in PWG at the American Legion would be like to see the Ramones at CBGB. It's to see the absolute epitome of, at that time, indie wrestling in the indie wrestling venue. And there's just some magic about that.
Mhm. Yeah, of course, of course. Obviously the future is always not set in stone. I would love to see Warrior Wrestling come to the UK at some point.
We've had some conversations. I don't think it's
Oh,
happening in 2022, but we are very interested in that as well. And I will just say that we've talked to at least one major level UK promotion about maybe working together in the future. So that
oh,
is, nothing's in stone,
no,
but
no.
that is on our radar.
Well, hey, that is great to hear. I would love to save some money on plane tickets. Oh,
Yes, sir.
oh God. Well, hey, Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here on the Soul Sessions. And for our fans and fans in the US, when is the next time we can experience Warrior Wrestling?
Well, Ben, it's been great to be here. As I tell people, I love talking wrestling. I could do this
Mhm.
for hours. So please invite me back whenever you'd like a little
Happy
more
to.
warrior perspective. The next time to see us is April 23rd. It will be 7 p.m. Eastern time in the States, and that's going to emanate from South Bend, Indiana, the Bendix Arena, where we had that great Will Ospreay Brian Cage match.
Mhm.
One of my favorite venues for wrestling that I've ever been in. It's just an incredible, incredible venue, and to be announced what will happen on that card, but I can tell you that Will Ospreay will be there, Thunder Rosa will be there, Athena will be there, Swerve will be there, Taya
Oh,
Valkyrie will be there, Sky Blue, Blake Christian, Alex Zane, Casey Navarro, Brian Cage, Sam Adonis, and some more yet to be shored up. So it's going to be a warrior level show Saturday, April 23rd, coming from South Bend, Indiana.
you rattling off stars just there. Damn, you really are a warrior. Well, Steve, thank you very much for being here. And well, everyone watching the Soul Sessions, as I always say, remember, be kind to one another and have a good day.
Amen. Thanks, Ben.
All the pleasure.